I remember up to a certain point, I hope that they're all doing okay, that they're all, that I haven't scarred them for life.
Within the dark abyss of a prison cell, where teenage mass murderers are locked away for heinous crimes, lies stories that will send chills down your spine.
17 people killed in a mass shooting at a Florida high school. Say people, most of them kids.
These young souls, stained by their unspeakable crimes, are thrust into a merciless world of violence and payback as they become prime targets of the seething anger that fills the prison air. Brace yourself for an unflinching exploration of justice, compassion, as we explore what happens to teenage mass murderers in prison. Nicholas Cruz. One of the deadliest school shootings in the history of America was done by 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz. On February 14, 2018, he entered Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and opened fire, shooting at anything or person on sight. By the time he was done, 17 people were dead and 17 others were injured. After the shooting, he fled the scene on foot by blending in with other students. But he was arrested approximately 1 hour and 20 minutes later in nearby Coral Springs. Cruz faced multiple charges, including first-degree murder. During his trial, he admitted to the crime and expressed remorse. He even told a psychologist that he committed the shooting on Valentine's Day because he believed that no one loved him. But this did little to ease the gravity of his actions and the pain of the victims' families. In November 2018, Nicholas also attacked a jail guard named Sergeant Raymond Beltran. Cruz rushed at him and tried to take his stun gun. They struggled, and Cruz punched the guard several times before being overpowered. This incident made Cruz's situation worse, adding more charges against him for attacking the guard, while he was already awaiting trial for the school shooting. After much deliberation under the judgment of Judge Elizabeth Scherer, on the 7th of March, 2018, a grand jury indicted Cruz on a total of 34 charges, 17 counts of first-degree murder and 17 counts of attempted first-degree murder. Life in prison became a grim reality for Cruz. As a high-profile inmate, his life behind bars is far from easy. He is often kept in isolation for his own protection, as other inmates might harm him due to the notoriety of his crime. Isolation means long hours alone in a small cell, with little interaction with others. This can be mentally taxing, especially for someone as young as Cruz. The weight of his actions and the lives he took haunt him daily. Unlike some inmates who can find a sense of purpose or redemption in prison, Cruz's future is bleak. There are no opportunities for parole or a second chance at freedom. His days are filled with the knowledge of the pain he caused and the lives he shattered. Michael Carneal. At just 14 years old, Michael Carneal committed a horrific act that would forever change the lives of many. On the 1st of December 1997, he opened fire on a group of students who were praying before school at Heath High School in West Paducah, Kentucky. Carneal killed 3 students. 14 years old Nicole Hadley, who was a freshman and played in the school band and on the freshman basketball team. 17 years old Jessica James, who was a member of the marching band, and Casey Steger, a 15-year-old who was a clarinetist in the school band and a member of the Agape Club and softball team. Also, 17 years old Shelley Shaberg, 15 years old Melissa Jenkins, 16 years old Kelly Hard-Alsip, 4th years old Holland Holm, and 15 years old Craig Keene were severely injured in the process of his shooting rampage. But what could be his motive? You see, Michael Carneal was known as a quiet and troubled teenager since his preschool, but he had been bullied and struggled with severe mental health issues, including depression and hallucinations. Despite his apparent need for help, these issues went largely unnoticed or untreated. On the day of the shooting, Carneal brought a pistol to school hidden in a blanket and started shooting without warning and without motive too. After the shooting, Carneal surrendered to the school principal and confessed to the crime. During his trial, it became clear that Carneal's mental state was a significant factor in his actions. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and severe depression. But that didn't change anything. In 1998, he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. For Carneal, life in prison has been challenging. His mental health issues persist, and he has spent much of his time in prison undergoing psychiatric treatment. He has expressed deep remorse for his actions, stating that he wishes he could undo the harm he caused. Despite his remorse, the trauma he inflicted on the victims, their families, and the community remains profound. In 2022, Michael Carneal came up for parole for the first time. His case was met with significant public attention and mixed reactions. Many of the victims' families and survivors of the shooting opposed his release, arguing that the gravity of his crime warranted continued imprisonment. Carneal's mental health was also a concern. Even though he had received treatment, there were doubts about his ability to live safely outside the prison environment. Ultimately, the parole board denied his request for release. Carneal remains behind bars, where he continues to receive psychiatric care. Kip Kinkle. In the cafeteria of Thurston High School in Springfield, Oregon, 15-year-old freshman student Kip Kinkle opened fire with a semi-automatic rifle, killing 2 of his classmates and 25 others on the 21st of May, 1998. The whole situation started on the 20th of May, 1998, a day before the shooting. That morning, Kip was expelled from Thurston High School for bringing a gun to school. Devastated and enraged, Kip returned home and shot his parents, William and Faith Kinkle. The next day, he went back to Thurston High School armed with a rifle and 2 handguns. He opened fire in the cafeteria and killed Ben Walker and Mikhail Nicolason and injured 25 others before being subdued by brave fellow students. During his trial, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, a severe mental illness that can cause delusions and hallucinations. Despite his young age and mental health issues, he was tried as an adult. In 1999, Kip pleaded guilty to murder and attempted murder charges to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to 111 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Life behind bars for Kip Kinkle has been an ongoing struggle with his mental health. He has spent much of his time in prison under close supervision and has received treatment for his schizophrenia. Over the years, Kip has expressed deep remorse for his actions. In a rare public statement, he said he wished he could trade places with his victims and that he thinks about the pain he caused every day. With speculations flying around, many argue that he should have received treatment in a psychiatric facility rather than a prison sentence. Others believe that the severity of his crimes warranted his lengthy incarceration. In 2020, Kip Kinkle filed a petition for a reduced sentence, citing his mental illness and the U.S. Supreme Court's rulings that mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles are unconstitutional. But his petition was denied, and he remains in prison. Shawn C. Another notorious figure in the history of American crime is Shawn C. Born on the 18th of May, 1969, Shawn was just 16 years old when he committed the crimes that would eventually lead to his execution, making him one of the youngest individuals to be put on death row in the United States. Shawn had a troubled life and mental health issues earlier on in life. As if adding hot pepper to his injury, Shawn became heavily involved in Satanism and the occult, which he claimed played a significant role in his actions. On that fateful day of March 5, 1986, Shawn shot and killed a convenience store clerk named Robert Bauer during a robbery in Oklahoma City. This was only the beginning of his violent spree. Less than a year later, on the 8th of September 1986, Shawn murdered his own mother, Vonda Bellifato, and his stepfather, Paul Bellifato, while they slept. He claimed that demons and his alter ego, Ezrat, had influenced him to commit these horrific acts. The brutality of Shawn's crimes, coupled with his young age, shocked the nation. His case raised numerous debates about juvenile justice, the death penalty, and the treatment of young offenders. During his trial, Shawn was found guilty of all 3 murders and was sentenced to death. While on death row, Shawn underwent a profound transformation. He converted to Christianity and became a vocal advocate against violence, Satanism, and the death penalty. He wrote extensively about his regrets and sought forgiveness from the families of his victims. Shawn's case attracted the attention of various human rights groups and advocates who argued that his age and mental state at the time of the crimes should have been considered mitigating factors. They campaigned for his sentence to be commuted to life imprisonment. But despite these efforts, the appeals for clemency were unsuccessful. Shawn Sellers was executed by lethal injection on 4th of February, 1999, at the age of 29. His execution marked the first time in 40 years that the United States had carried out the death penalty on a person for crimes committed as a minor. T.J. Lane, Thomas Michael Lane III, also known as T.J. Lane, gained infamy as the perpetrator of the Chardon High School shooting on February 27, 2012. At just 17 years old, Lane walked into the school cafeteria and opened fire on his fellow students, killing 3 students and wounding 3 others. With no intention backing his acting, people simply attributed his actions to his troubled background. Lane came from a broken family with a history of domestic violence and instability. But despite these challenges, the magnitude of his actions shocked everyone who knew him. After the shooting, Lane was apprehended quickly and taken into custody. His trial, which followed soon after, revealed a young man with deep-seated anger and a lack of remorse for his actions. During this infamous trial, Lane's behavior was erratic and disturbing. He wore a T-shirt with the word "killer" written on it and smirked throughout the proceedings. T.J. Lane spewed vile and unprintable words today at the families of 3 students he killed, gave them the finger, and then laughed and smiled as they described him as an animal and a monster. His lack of remorse and seemingly indifferent attitude towards his heinous actions only deepened the community's pain. Ultimately, Lane was tried as an adult and sentenced to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Lane's fate behind bars has been filled with uproar and violence. In 2014, he managed to escape from the Allen Correctional Institution in Lima, Ohio, along with 2 other inmates. However, he was recaptured within hours. This time around, he was placed in solitary confinement because he has proven to be troubling both outside and inside the prison walls. Barry Lukatis. On February 2nd, 1996, 14 years old, Barry Lukatis walked into his algebra class at Frontier Middle School in Moses Lake, Washington, armed with a rifle and 2 handguns. Lukatis opened fire, killing his algebra teacher and 2 students, and wounding another student. Swiftly, Lukatis was apprehended by a teacher who courageously subdued him. The motives behind his actions were complex and troubling. It was later revealed that he had been struggling with severe depression, anger, and a troubled family life. He had also been influenced by violent media, including books and movies that glorified violence and revenge. The legal proceedings that followed his case were intense and closely watched. On the 24th of September, 1997, Lukatis was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of second-degree murder, 1 count of first-degree attempted murder, and 16 counts of aggravated kidnapping. He was also sentenced to serve 2 life sentences and an additional 205 years without the possibility of parole. He is currently imprisoned at the Clallam Bay Corrections Center in Washington State. The Washington State Court of Appeals denied Lukatis' request for a new trial in 1999 when he wanted a retrial. But in 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life sentences without parole for minors convicted of murder were unconstitutional. This decision was applied retroactively in 2016. So in 2017, Lukatis, convicted as a teen, was resentenced to 189 years in prison after apologizing for the first time. Evan Ramsey. Evan Ramsey's story is a tragic example of a life shaped by hardship, leading to a violent and haunting end. Born in Alaska in 1981, Evan had a difficult childhood. His father was imprisoned when Evan was young, and his mother struggled with alcoholism. Evan and his siblings were placed in foster care, which added to his feelings of abandonment and isolation. On February 19, 1997, at the age of 16, Evan brought a shotgun to Bethel Regional High School in Alaska. He entered the school and opened fire, killing the school's principal and a student and injuring 2 others. The attack shocked the small community of Bethel and left a deep scar on everyone involved. Evan's path to this tragic event was marked by bullying and mental health issues. He had been teased and tormented by his classmates for years, which contributed to his sense of despair. Despite reaching out for help, he felt that no one understood or cared about his struggles. This sense of hopelessness, combined with easy access to firearms, led him down a dark path. After the shooting, Evan was quickly apprehended by the police. During his trial, his troubled upbringing and mental health problems were brought to light. Despite these mitigating factors, he was found guilty of murder and attempted murder. In 1998, he was sentenced to 210 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 50 years. Now in his 40s, Evan Ramsey remains behind bars. His case is often cited in discussions about the impact of bullying, mental health, and the availability of guns to young people. The haunting reality of Evan's fate is a stark reminder of how a combination of personal pain and systemic failures can lead to tragic outcomes. Evan has expressed remorse for his actions, understanding the immense pain he caused to the victims and their families. He has also spoken about his regret and the heavy burden of living with the consequences of his actions. Demetrios Pappas. Demetrios Pappas, a teenage mass murderer, is a tragic figure in the history of school shootings in the United States. Born in 2001, Demetrios was just 17 years old when he carried out a deadly attack on his high school, Santa Fe High School, in Texas, on May 18, 2018. On that day, Demetrios brought a shotgun and a revolver, both of which were owned by his father, to school. He entered an art classroom and opened fire, killing 10 people and injuring 13 others. His victims included fellow students and teachers. The attack sent shockwaves through the nation because yet another school shooting was added to the growing list of tragic events in American schools. Demetrios was captured alive after the attack. He reportedly told police that he did not shoot people he liked, so they could tell his story. This detail added a chilling layer to his actions, suggesting a calculated attempt to leave a lasting impression. Following his arrest, Demetrios was charged with capital murder and aggravated assault on a public servant. Due to his age, he was not eligible for the death penalty, but he faced a life sentence without the possibility of parole. His trial has been delayed multiple times due to concerns over his mental health. Demetrios has been diagnosed with schizophrenia and severe depression, which has complicated the legal proceedings. The fate of Demetrios Pappas highlights the complex and often tragic nature of teenage mass murderers. On one hand, they commit horrific acts that cause immense pain and suffering. On the other hand, they are often troubled individuals with mental health issues that may have contributed to their actions. In Demetrios's case, his mental health has been a significant factor in understanding his motives and determining his punishment. As Demetrios remains behind bars, his story serves as a reminder of the need for better mental health support for young people. It also underscores the importance of addressing issues such as bullying, access to firearms, and the overall well-being of students to prevent future tragedies. Subscribers pick. The image displayed on your screen captures a chilling and brutal reality for teenage mass murderers behind bars. The text, "beaten to death," starkly highlights the violent end met by this young inmate. In the unforgiving world of prison, individuals convicted of heinous crimes like mass murder often become targets of extreme hostility from other inmates. This image shows what happened to teenage mass murderers in prison. The young man in the photo, surrounded by other prisoners, faced a brutal attack that led to his death. His expression, combined with the context of his demise, paints a vivid picture of the relentless violence and peril that can engulf notorious inmates. Prisons are harsh environments where notoriety can be a curse. High-profile criminals, especially young ones, are often marked for retribution, living every day in fear and danger. This image serves as a haunting reminder of the severe and often fatal consequences of life in prison for teenage mass murderers, emphasizing the need for reforms and better protections within the justice system. Tell us, what do you think about this image? Brenda Ann Spencer. On the 29th of January, 1979, 16 years old, Brenda Ann Spencer was armed with a .22 caliber rifle. She opened fire on Cleveland Elementary School in San Diego, California. Her act of violence left 2 adults dead and injured 8 children and a police officer. The reason she gave for her actions was chilling and devoid of remorse. "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." Brenda was said to have grown up in a dysfunctional family and displayed signs of distress and instability. Her father gave her the rifle as a Christmas gift, a decision that would have tragic consequences. On that fateful Monday morning, Brenda took her place by a window in her home, which was directly across the street from the school. From there, she began her attack, targeting children and staff as they arrived for the day. Swiftly, the police responded to the scene, and after a tense standoff that lasted several hours, Brenda was eventually taken into custody. She was tried as an adult and pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and several counts of assault with a deadly weapon. She was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Her statement about not liking Mondays inspired the song "I Don't Like Mondays" by the Boomtown Rats, bringing even more notoriety to the case. In prison, Brenda has been denied parole multiple times. Each time she has appeared before the parole board, her requests for release have been turned down. Reasons cited include her lack of remorse and the severity of her crime. The parole board also considered the safety of the public, determining that releasing her would pose too great a risk. Zachary Davis. "The thing that bothers me is that you have shown no regrets, no remorse, in murdering your own mother at age 15, said Judge D. David Gay of the Sumner County Criminal Court. The city of Hendersonville was not spared from the gruesome crime of a teenager. In August 2012, at just 15 years old, Zachary used a sledgehammer to kill his mother, Melanie Davis, while she was asleep. He then set their house on fire in an attempt to kill his older brother, Josh, though Josh managed to escape unharmed. Zachary's story is especially haunting because of his troubled background. He was described as a quiet, introverted boy who had a difficult time coping with the death of his father when he was 9. His mental health issues were evident, and he was diagnosed with severe depression. Despite these signs, the severity of his crime was unexpected. During his trial, Zachary showed little emotion, which added to the eerie nature of his case. He claimed that a voice in his head told him to kill his mother. His defense argued that he was mentally ill, but the prosecution maintained that he knew right from wrong. According to the judge, during investigation, 2 suspicious phone apps on his phone was seen, one having to do with serial killers and the other listing torture devices. A notebook with such quotes as, "You can't spell laughter without slaughter," and his statement to police that, "I didn't feel anything when I killed her." So in the end, Zachary was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Earlier in the sentencing hearing, Davis's paternal grandmother, Gail Cron, asked for leniency and mercy. She said her son died from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, when Zach was just 9. That incident and loss of his father might have affected his mental health, and if he was given proper mental health treatment in time, this would not have happened. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. It was meant to be a typical spring day at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. But on April 20th, 1999, that innocent veneer was shattered in the most unimaginable way. Two high school students, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, carried out one of the deadliest school shootings in American history, unleashing a reign of terror that would echo through the decades. Eric Harris was 18 years old, and Dylan Klebold was 17 when they executed their deadly plan. They entered their school armed with guns and homemade bombs, intending to cause massive destruction. By the end of their rampage, they had killed a total of 13 people, which included 12 students and 1 teacher, injuring 24 others. After the attack, both Eric and Dylan took their own lives, making it impossible for them to face the consequences of their actions in a court of law. Despite their deaths, the legacy of Harris and Klebold's actions has had far-reaching effects. The Columbine massacre brought national attention to issues like school security, gun control, and the mental health of teenagers. The attack also highlighted the impact of bullying, as both Eric and Dylan were reported to have been bullied by their peers. During further investigations, their diaries and videos revealed that their motivations were complex and driven by a mix of anger, revenge, and a desire for notoriety. In the aftermath of the Columbine High School massacre, the families of over 30 victims were awarded a $2.5 million settlement in April 2001. The perpetrators' families, the Harrises and Klebolds, contributed the largest share of $1.57 million from their homeowners' insurance. One family initially sought $250 million, but was later compelled to accept a $366,000 settlement in 2003. 5 other victims' families received undisclosed settlements that same year. Though no amount could undo the tragedy, these settlements offered some financial recourse and accountability for the devastated community. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.